Have you noticed what's happening to gas prices lately? Oil prices surging past $100 per barrel. Analysts warning about the most severe energy crisis since the 1970s. And a new conflict in the Middle East shaking global markets. Now here's the real question. How did we get here? And why are so many people suddenly calling this short-term pain for long-term gain? Because if you rewind the tape just a little, the story looks very different. Right now, as oil prices continue to surge to levels not seen in years, a situation many analysts say is a direct result of escalating conflict between the United States and Iran under Donald Trump's leadership, the president took to social media with a message that instantly sparked debate. He wrote, quote, "Short-term oil prices, which will drop rapidly when the destruction of the Iran nuclear threat is over, is a very small price to pay for USA and world safety and peace. Only fools would think differently." That statement alone raises a lot of questions. Because when oil prices spike, the first place Americans feel it is at the pump. And that brings us to something worth remembering. During the campaign trail, Donald Trump repeatedly promised something very specific. He said he would bring gas prices down immediately. In rally after rally he said,
"We'll unleash energy independence and we will bring the price of gasoline down immediately. So we're going to get your gas prices down and we will, ready? Drill, baby, drill. Going to get your energy way down. You're going to spend a lot less money for your gasoline. You have that special stuff. We will unleash American energy and bring prices way down fast."
So pause for a second and think about that. If a candidate promises cheaper gas prices, and after taking office oil suddenly spikes above $100 a barrel, people naturally start asking, what changed? But that wasn't the only promise. Trump also campaigned heavily on something else, ending wars. His message was simple and powerful.
I'm going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. No more wars, no more disruptions. We will have prosperity and we will have peace. Under Trump, we will have no more wars, no more disruptions, and we will have prosperity and peace for all. I am the candidate of peace. I am peace.
That line became a major talking point during the election. The idea was that America had seen too many conflicts in the Middle East and voters were ready for stability. Now let's connect the dots. Trump wins the election. Shortly after, the United States becomes involved in a new conflict in the Middle East. Tensions escalate dramatically with Iran. Markets react immediately. Oil prices surge to levels not seen in years. And because oil is a global commodity, higher oil prices translate into higher gasoline prices for consumers around the world. So let's break this down in simple terms. The same candidate who promised to lower gas prices quickly is now presiding over a geopolitical situation that pushed oil above $100 per barrel. And according to reporting from the Wall Street Journal, a newspaper owned by Rupert Murdoch and certainly not known as a liberal outlet, analysts have described the situation as the most severe energy crisis since the 1970s. That's a staggering comparison. The 1970s oil crisis reshaped global energy policy, caused massive inflation, and led to long gas lines across America. But here's the part that makes the story even more controversial. Many analysts argue that this situation was not inevitable. It wasn't triggered by an unexpected attack or unavoidable crisis. Even officials within the administration acknowledged that Iran had not launched an attack on the United States, and no immediate attack was underway. Which means critics say the escalation that triggered this crisis was essentially a voluntary decision. Think about that for a moment. If the conflict hadn't escalated, would oil prices still have jumped this dramatically? Some analysts say no. Which leads to the argument that this entire surge in global energy prices might be what policy experts call an unforced error. Now, historically speaking, presidents are rarely responsible for gas prices going up or down. That's an important point. Oil markets are global. Prices are influenced by everything from supply disruptions to demand shifts, geopolitical tensions, natural disasters, and global economic growth. For example, when gas prices rose during Joe Biden's presidency, economists pointed to several major factors. The massive surge in demand after the COVID-19 pandemic, as economies reopened, global inflation driving up the cost of energy production, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine tightening global oil supply. Those forces were global in scale, and most economists agreed they would likely have affected fuel prices regardless of who was president. But here's the key difference critics are highlighting now. They argue that this moment is one of the rare cases where a specific presidential decision directly triggered the conditions leading to higher oil prices. Without the escalation with Iran, they say, the current energy shock might not exist. And yet, the messaging from Trump allies has been remarkably consistent. Across television interviews and political commentary, a phrase keeps popping up again and again: short-term pain for long-term gain.
A short-term disruption for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Short-term pain be for long-term gain.
We're going to have some short-term pain with long-term gain.
Short-term pay for a long-term gain.
Some short-term pain, yes, but we've got some long-term gain. Short-term spike for a long-term gain.
Some short-term pain for American consumers.
We may have to deal with that in the short term.
Short-term and temporary.
Temporary, short-term pain.
It's going to suck in the short term.
Some short-term pain.
Short-term pain. We have to focus on the short-term.
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 Short-term and long-term.
Short-term blip. Hopefully this is a short-term pain. Short-term is highly outweighed of the long-term benefits.
Some short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain.
If you listen to the commentary circulating across media, you hear the same line repeated over and over: short-term disruption, short-term pain, temporary spike, short-term sacrifice, short-term pain for long-term gain. But that message is drawing criticism from another angle as well. Because many people remember the political debates during the COVID-19 pandemic. Back then, public health officials asked Americans to make temporary sacrifices to slow the spread of the virus. Wearing masks, social distancing, and short-term shutdowns to prevent hospitals from being overwhelmed. Those measures sparked intense backlash from many political voices who argued that Americans should not have to endure even short-term inconvenience. Some of the same political commentators now asking Americans to accept higher gas prices as short-term pain were among those strongly opposing pandemic restrictions. That contrast has fueled accusations of hypocrisy. Critics argue that if temporary sacrifices were unacceptable during a global health emergency, why should Americans now accept economic hardship caused by a political decision? But the debate goes even deeper. Trump has predicted that oil prices will drop rapidly once the Iran nuclear threat is eliminated. In other words, the current spike in fuel costs is temporary and will reverse once the conflict is resolved. However, that prediction reminds some observers of another moment in recent history. Back in early 2020, when the first COVID-19 cases began appearing in the United States, Trump famously said, "We have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China, and we have it under control. It's going to be just fine." As history unfolded, the pandemic ultimately claimed more than 1 million lives in the United States. So critics argue that Trump's track record on predicting major global developments is mixed at best. And that raises a question worth asking: when leaders make confident predictions about the future, how much weight should voters give them? Because the debate over gas prices isn't happening in isolation. It's part of a much larger conversation about promises, expectations, and political accountability. During his first term in office, Trump made a number of major pledges. He promised a massive infrastructure law. He promised a cheaper and more comprehensive healthcare plan. He promised a middle-class tax cut, a manufacturing renaissance, and a dramatic jobs boom. Critics argue that many of those promises never fully materialized. Now in this term, they say similar patterns are emerging again. Campaign promises included reducing everyday costs, lowering grocery prices, bringing down rent, releasing documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, and delivering accountability for powerful figures tied to past scandals. Supporters argue progress is being made. Critics argue those promises remain largely unfulfilled. And this debate touches on one of the oldest questions in politics. What do voters actually get in return for their support? Is the purpose of electing a leader to ask citizens for sacrifice in service of long-term goals? Or is it to deliver immediate improvements in everyday life? For many working-class Americans, the issue feels very practical. When gas prices rise, transportation costs increase. That affects food prices, shipping costs, and the price of nearly everything in the economy. So when oil hits $100 per barrel, the ripple effects are felt everywhere, from grocery stores to trucking companies to airline tickets. At the same time, Trump's personal wealth has reportedly increased significantly, with estimates suggesting his net worth rose by billions over the past year. Critics argue that contrast highlights a deeper issue. While ordinary Americans face rising costs, the wealthy often benefit from economic shifts tied to political decisions. Supporters, of course, push back. They argue that confronting Iran's nuclear program is essential for global security, and that short-term economic disruptions are worth it if they prevent a larger geopolitical threat. And that brings us back to the central question of this entire debate. Is the current energy crisis an unavoidable step toward greater security, or an unnecessary escalation that triggered higher costs for millions of people? So now the question shifts to you. When you look at everything happening, the campaign promises, the new conflict in the Middle East, oil prices surging above $100 per barrel, and politicians asking Americans to accept short-term pain, what do you think? Was this crisis unavoidable? Or could it have been prevented? And perhaps the biggest question of all. When leaders make bold promises about the future, should voters believe them, or wait to see what actually happens once they are in power? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because this is one of those issues where public opinion is shaping the political conversation in real time. If you found this breakdown helpful and want more deep dive analysis on politics, global conflicts, energy prices, and the stories behind the headlines, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video.